has roots in the responsibilities of the federal government to protect airline passengers that go back at least to the Civil Aeronautics Act of 1938, which was signed into law by President Franklin Roosevelt. And after the deregulation that replaced that framework, it became even more important for us to be proactive with guardrails to make sure that people are treated fairly by airlines. That's been especially true in recent years. If we just pause and think about everything that the aviation sector, airlines, and airline passengers have been through, it is a dizzying sequence of events. When we got here as an administration, just 3 years ago, the dominant question about America's airlines was whether they would stay in business. Within a year or two after that, it was the opposite concern. Demand had come roaring back so swiftly that airlines were unable to take good care of passengers. And we heard from so many passengers dealing with lost baggage, disrupted itineraries, efforts to try to get their money back when they were owed a refund. The list goes on and on. Just about all of us have some kind of story about having a flight canceled or having baggage lost. As the Department of Transportation, we hear these stories by the thousands, often in the form of consumer complaints. We hear stories from passengers like the one who talked about having a trip planned from Tampa to Long Beach, and then learning late in the game that her flight was canceled and the only available rebooking was 5 days later. Another whose flight was canceled, but who really needed to make sure that they got to where they needed to be on time, so booked a more expensive ticket with a different airline, only to find they couldn't even recoup the lower fare from the first airline that they were owed. And when many things like that happen, those aren't just inconveniences, they're violations that we as a department can do something about. In recent years, more Americans have gotten familiar with our tools and our Office of Aviation Consumer Protection. That is a small team at the USDOT that tracks down refunds and settles disputes with airlines on behalf of consumers. Their work on not just the enforcement but the development of our consumer protection rules has been an extraordinary benefit to the 2 million plus passengers who travel every day through airports, including this one. And the Biden-Harris administration has taken action to add people to this small but mighty team. But it has been clear that we need more resources, that we need allies, that we need a force multiplier to help us get that work done. Meanwhile, many of America's attorney generals have experienced an equal and opposite frustration, which was many passengers and customers coming to them, and yet there being a federal framework in which the states are not empowered to take direct enforcement action. So you got us at the federal level looking for more resources, and then you've got all these resources and leadership at the state level eager to do more to support the people that they serve. That's what today's announcement is about. A match between those two facts that's going to make a difference for airline passengers across the country. And that's why we are delighted to announce a partnership between the USDOT and a bipartisan group of more than a dozen state attorneys general that creates a new fast-track system to review customer complaints, to hold airlines accountable, and to better protect airline passengers. It's very important for passengers to know that they're getting a fair deal, and for airlines to know that they will be held accountable if they don't fulfill their end of the bargain. And the USDOT and state attorneys general can now work together to do what we all came here to do, which is to serve the people who trust us to get that work done. The support that's being offered by state attorney general's offices means that our capacity to protect airline passengers is expanding. The number of people who can help passengers resolve their issues expands beyond the excellent 36 strong team at our department to engage a national network of advocates, attorneys, and officials who routinely handle consumer complaints and can now do it in new ways with a view toward aviation. So again, I want to give a big thank you to Colorado's Attorney General and his team for their work in bringing this project to fruition. I also want to thank our own U.S. DOT Office of General Counsel, which was led by John Putnam at the time that this concept was first being cooked up. So we're doubly thankful for him, both for the work that he rendered when we were colleagues and the work that he continues to do here in the state of Colorado. And we can only accept his departure from our ranks because we know he's doing such good work here. So thank you, John, for everything you do. And our acting general counsel, Subhash Iyer, who has been working closely with Attorney General Weiser on this bipartisan agreement that's already engaged attorneys general from red and blue states and territories, from here in the Rockies to the Virgin Islands. We're including states like California, Illinois, New York, Nevada, and of course Colorado that have some of the country's busiest airports, and there are more states getting ready to sign up already. So the way it works is, once their office gets a complaint, they investigate it. If the state AG determines that the airline violated the law, or importantly, if they determine that the airline is not cooperating with their state investigation, they can refer those complaints to our department through a newly established reporting process, and we will fast track our review of those potential violations. In the event that our review determines that enforcement action is warranted, we provide state AGs access to our new modernized consumer complaint system to support those enforcement efforts. There's a lot more work still to do to make sure passengers get the fairest and best flights and service possible, but this partnership is a big step forward. And today's announcement is the latest in a series of actions to make passengers better off. Of course, our preference is that passengers not experience these problems in the first place. After unacceptable levels of cancellations by 2022, we pressed airlines wherever necessary and worked with them wherever appropriate to help bring cancellations to a 10-year low in 2023. This year's off to a good start. We're seeing cancellations stay below 2%, about 1.5% last time I checked, which is well below the average rate. And we're going to keep engaging airlines to keep that up. When something does go wrong, there needs to be accountability. It's why we launched flightrights.gov to provide passengers with a comprehensive resource that details the full scope of their rights. And we know that transparency made a difference because within weeks of letting the airlines know that we were going to launch that tool, very swiftly, we went from 0 of the top 10 airlines to all of the top 10 airlines, guaranteeing in writing that they offer free rebooking and meals, and almost all of them free hotel accommodations when an airline's responsible for a delay or a cancellation. We've set records for tough penalties, including the $140 million enforcement action against Southwest Airlines for the 2022 Christmas meltdown. And I would note that one action is more than double what DOT had levied against airlines over the 2 decades before we got here. And even more important than the fines that go back to the Treasury is what is getting back into passengers' pockets, which now stands at over $3 billion in refunds and reimbursements. We're also expanding rights for passengers who use wheelchairs so they can travel safely and with dignity. We've pressed airlines to get rid of junk fees, including those that keep families from sitting together on an airplane. 4 airlines have already implemented fee-free family seating after our call. We're preparing an industry-wide ban on the practice so that no parent has to pay extra to sit next to their kids, but our message to the airlines is, why wait? You can go ahead and offer that right now, and we think that you should. And of course, the most important thing of all is the work that is maintaining the safety record of the United States to continue ensuring air travel is our safest form of transportation. I think it's safe to say that air travel in general and U.S. air travel safety in particular are civilizational achievements that require constant attention and maintenance. Travel is everything from everyday work routine for some to the adventure of a lifetime for others. And we need to make sure that that experience is secure and that that experience is fair. So we are thrilled with this new example of how states and the federal government can cooperate to make passengers better off. We are so thankful to everybody who has participated to date and inviting every state and territory, if they haven't already, to join us in the effort. With that, I'll return it to AG Weiser to round us out for our separate opportunity for media questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, and I just want to give a big shout out to the Biden-Harris administration for a commitment to competition and consumer protection policy. What you just heard was a record of fines and action surpassing everything that preceded it. This is a new day for consumer protection. This agreement is about what we might call a cooperative federalism. How does the federal government and the states work together in harmony with respect for the role of states? It's no accident we have this agreement when we have a former mayor who brings a Colorado state government official into his work. We need to recognize that our work together is a team sport. At our best, we're supporting one another, and we're finding creative ways to be in partnership. There are members of my team that deserve some real shout-outs here. Nathan Blake, our Deputy for Consumer Protection, actually started working on this initiative when he was, believe it or not, working for Tom Miller in Iowa. We hired him. He continued to work on it with my counsel, Shaylin Kettering. They've brought this to fruition. Cynthia Garcia is our consumer engagement lead. All those complaints I mentioned, Cynthia has overseen them. She's now able to know that when someone calls up and says, I'm being mistreated, we've got a direct line to make sure that individual gets back the refunds in the way they should. Many of the people I mentioned during the pandemic said, the flight got canceled because of public health reasons. And then I was told I've got to rebook a new flight within 90 days or I lose everything. Or they rebooked one flight and they're told you can't use the rest of your credit. That's unacceptable. We've got a way to make sure we can hold them accountable. I do want to say that the ideal world would be one where states are given formal authority to enforce consumer protection law alongside the Department of Transportation. Congress has failed to act on that thus far, but we are not waiting for action. The Department of Transportation is taking this partnership and empowering us to be good partners. This is going to make a real difference for consumers, ensuring that when they bring complaints, we can get action. I really want to thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for listening, for taking the role of states seriously, and for being here in Colorado. By working together, we're making a difference for airline passengers. We're going to hold accountable companies who are breaking the law and undermining travel experience, and we're going to make sure to send an important message. Consumers have rights. They deserve to be treated fairly. A number of people with us today are consumer advocates here in Colorado. This is important work. We're so appreciative of your leadership. Thank you all very much.